Well, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started here, and if anyone trickles in late, we'll go ahead and get started. They can just hop on in. First of all, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to come out tonight. Before we get into introductions and questions, I'd like to start us off with a quick centering activity to get our mind focused and in the right headspace. Please post in the chat your answer to the following question. What does a rural community mean to you? So the chat will be in your side. Just answer, what does a rural community mean to you?
And while we're thinking about that, I'll go ahead and get us started. My name is Lauren. I'm Mia's campaign manager. Over there we have Miss Mia Mason, who's running for Congress in Maryland's District 1. She is our Democratic nominee running against Andy Harris. I do want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to come here and, ask questions and listen. Just a little bit about Mia. She's a 20-year veteran and is focused on providing affordable health care to all, building sustainable infrastructure, and much more. She's fighting to restore equity and equality back in our communities. And I'll actually turn it over to Mia to give a little bit more information about herself.
Yes. So just to make sure that everybody knows that I did 10 years in the Navy. That was the first part of my military career, where basically right after 9/11, I was overseas in Afghanistan on the USS Kitty Hawk. Then afterwards, I was able to come back home to the United States for a brief little, port of leave. And then we had Hurricane Katrina come around. And as y'all just had, a small tropical storm, but we are expecting maybe 2 or 3 more storms here on the Eastern Shore. So we definitely want to make sure that all of you are prepared for that. So do keep that in mind as we continue to go into this hurricane season for you to be safe. After that, I came over to the to the East Coast, and where I served in Norfolk, Virginia. I switched over to the Army and spent the rest of my career active duty. I was infantry, counter intel, and of course ended up here at the DC National Guard having to fight for my retirement. Simply because of who I was, they decided to discriminate me and say that I couldn't exist because the policies were changing and it didn't include me. So legally we had to fight for that. And I thought when I came to Maryland, I would have equality. That really wasn't true. So I became a friend and an advocate of many communities in and around DC through Prince George's County, Baltimore, and of course the Eastern Shore. And one of the things that struck me out is how far people go to come to DC to basically get legislation passed to fix the wrongs of our country. And I'm talking about the historical wrongs that have happened. Today, for example, we just had the voters' rights passed in the House. Now it's up for us to call our senators and get that passed through Senator Mitch McConnell and everybody else there so that we can make sure that our voter rights are protected for this upcoming election. Speaking of that, we also have the HEALS Act, which is coming to the House. We understand that a lot of folks are in a place of hurt right now. We've lost our benefits. People are moving out in a rampant state of need because they're facing eviction and they want to get out before they get kicked out, and they can't afford it. Some voters I've talked to have basically turned from giving us money and helping us out to basically asking for money and asking for food. The normal people who are out on the street have doubled and gone elsewhere because they're looking for the help as well. Our country is in a depression. We need to be able to make sure that we are able to provide a stimulus package that is going to offer us jobs, our health care, and our security for our nation, so that we can succeed in restoring the equity and equality, so that we don't have to worry about what we've been doing for the last 4 years and fighting a civil rights war legally because they want to take away our rights, which is one of them is voting. So if you join me tonight, we're going to answer a bunch of questions which were pre-submitted, and hopefully when we go into this debate in October, we're going to knock him off his feet. And in November, we're going to have all of our independents and Democrats voting to make sure that we hit our win number to remove Representative Harris. And that includes our fellow Republicans who hate him too. So I'll turn it back over to our host tonight.
Thank you, Mia. Very insightful points. Just touching back on our centering activity, what does a rural community mean to you? We have some of the submissions. I'll go ahead and read them. Laid back lifestyle, definitely. A community that is relatively disconnected from information and progressive education. An area with somewhat limited resources, especially transportation and jobs.
Yeah.
A rural community is one that is low density. The census defines it as non-metropolitan. Limited accessibility to neighbors, stores, schools. So I think when we're thinking of rural communities, a lot of things that come to mind are the issues that rural communities have. So I do want to remind everybody that tonight's town hall is about rural communities, so we want to keep all of the questions focused to that topic. So if you do have any questions, you can feel free to enter them in the chat, and we'll address them in the order that they come in. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and ask Mia to give her statement on her position about rural communities.
So one of the things that I've observed about our rural communities is our loss of health care. It was on the cutting block after, Governor Hogan was like, we have to get rid of Flightline Medical, and we have closing healthcare systems. In fact, I had a voter call me today about our healthcare systems and say that there is only one on the Eastern Shore, which basically means that we have a monopoly on the Eastern Shore, and we can't allow that to happen any further. This is one of the most important things that, as a rural community, we need to be able to bring in new jobs and new infrastructure into this so that we can make sure that we can bring in the communities that are around us that are growing and keep them here in the future. I understand a rural community means you drive a half hour to 2 hours to get to where you're going. Well, sometimes it's 10-15 minutes, and we need those local and small businesses to reopen. And sadly, right now in this pandemic, 50% of them aren't going to be able to reopen. I went to a store today and they were gone. I was like, why? It was just because they didn't have any customers for 6 months. That's why they were gone. I had to drive an extra hour and a half out of my way to basically get what I needed to do to succeed in my campaign. So we need to be able to make sure that we bring this forward and address it, especially when it comes to our future in ending this gerrymandered district.
Great. Thank you so much, Mia. I guess we're going to go ahead and get into some of the questions that were pre-submitted. Again, these are local rural issues that specifically impact especially the Eastern Shore, and then other parts of our district such as Harford County, Cecil County.
Yeah.
So first question is, what can we do to reduce pollution from poultry farms while also making sure that farmers earn a living wage?
Well, the hardest thing that we understand is that people love chicken. And I have to say that we have to be able to reduce the amount of chickens that are raised on the farms so that we can actually control the waste that they produce. One of the biggest things that we also need to be able to do is make sure that our farmers have an income that provides them a profit as well. This doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be chicken, which means that we have to be able to provide legislation to bring it forward. Right now, I understand that the pollution that is put into our Chesapeake Bay is damaging our environment. Our Eastern Shore is shrinking on both sides, and they produce about 12 million pounds of ammonia emissions just alone to produce chicken. And if that continues to increase, that's just as bad as having cows or cattle out in the Midwest. And we can't have that here on our shore just because they want more birds and bigger birds and, more bang for their buck. So we have to be able to make sure that our poultry farmers work to combat this issue, and we have to make sure that they invest in the technology to do that. And that requires that the city codes, and the federal and state codes also are updated so that they can invest in the infrastructure to provide that. And I have to say that, when I worked at Domino Sugar a long time ago, I had to deal with environmental pollution. In that was violations for us polluting the environment. on the bay and in the air. And I have to tell you that majority of the time it was self-reported. And the way that the EPA worked is that you got a smaller fine if you self-reported it. If you were caught, it was like a double the fine. We need to make sure that the EPA is fully funded so that they can issue the fines because they're notified before the company starts reporting it, which means that we no longer require a self-reporting system by these companies. We're actively monitoring these companies and making sure they're not polluting our bay, our rivers, or our oceans here on the Eastern Shore. That's something that we can do. And lastly, like I briefly talked about, was the universal income. I brought it up in the last town hall with the high school DIMS. And basically, if they're not making a profit and they need to be able to have subsistence, universal basic income is something that we can provide them and their families.
Thank you, Mia. I think that somebody in the chat has a question kind of with this, so I'd like to go ahead and cover it. From John, it is, what about processing plants that can produce electricity from chicken waste? I haven't been keeping up with the subject, but there's one such plant in south of Princess Anne.
Yeah, I completely understand that. It's basically, let me ask the question back. Is it a wheelbarrow where it's like, they're burning the incineration, drying it out, and also burning it?
I think so, but I'm not entirely sure how that plant operates, but I would assume that it is burning in order to produce steam, which would then run the generators.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't know how how that plant actually functions. It's just an assumption.
Yeah, just like when we were getting rid of our waste, we also had to make sure that we had natural gas to help fuel that fire. And then that was also monitored and self-reported. So turning that over to an active monitoring system is what the state is going to have to require. And of course, the Fed's going to have to require, and we're going to have to push that legislation down.
Excellent, thank you. I do want to remind everyone just to keep your questions to rural communities, and then if we do have time at the end, we can touch on some other subjects. So I'll go ahead and jump into the next question, which was submitted from somebody in Snow Hill. Farmers are declaring bankruptcy at record numbers. How will MIA save small farms from going under?
Excellent question. Everybody has been filing bankruptcy. The bankruptcy courts are backed up maybe for the next 2 years. And we have to be able to make sure that we provide them a different avenue, which is the SBA, and give them a grant with no strings attached and make sure that they're able to stay steady. This is why we have the HEROES Act, and if it gets delayed or pushed back, I'm not in office yet, but we can basically tell our story and go to DC or call our local representatives and have them go to DC and relay that story for us. Now, as far as actually getting the stimulus passed to make sure that it affects our rural communities, that's something that I can put in through an amendment to make sure that it's designated for our congressional districts.
Thank you. Kind of touching on that subject of agriculture from Ryan, how would you incentivize the agriculture industry to localize and to diversify beyond corn, soy, and livestock?
Well, I've done some wonderful lobbying work before in the past with a product called hemp. It allows us to create plastics. It allows us to create manufacturing products for cars, homes, and commercial buildings. So with this, it grows fast, it's profitable, and it has byproducts like CBD. So this gives us something that the farmers can sell once they have their license, and we can talk with the governor and maybe get more licenses for them. But basically, I'm for free, legalization to make it happen across the entire country. We just need to be able to make sure that we elect others across the entire state that believe in the same ideals that I do, so that we have that unification of our nation.
Excellent. All right, moving on to our next question from Kelsey. How will you help with broadband acquisition? This is essential now. We need to have this for future situations.
I agree. Right now, everyone has failed us, including me. because even when I was pushing the issue and I was there lobbying in Annapolis for 4 days, not many people were talking about broadband. And then when it got passed, they said that it wasn't going to come or start getting installed until 2021. We need to make sure that we do something like the Telecommunications Act a long time ago, where we also provided telephones to everybody. A long time ago, we didn't have power in rural communities. We didn't have telephones in rural communities. It's now time for a federal investment into our rural communities to make sure that everybody has broadband. And I know the state has this already approved and they're starting the project in 2021, but we also need to be able to bring this up to the federal level. And like Governor Hogan has stated with the National Governors Association, we need to be able to invest in our states because Donald Trump isn't doing it for us. And for the last year, he's been good at that, but he's also been focusing on what makes him money, tolls. We need to be able to invest in our rural communities because that's where we grow out here, and we want to make our brand our Maryland.
Speaking of growing, this next question is about providing high quality jobs. What is your plan to bring high quality jobs and increase entrepreneurship in Somerset County?
That's a difficult area. And one of the hardest things is finding a way for manufacturers to get in and stay in, especially when we're losing so much land in Somerset. No matter if it's a full moon and high tide, many areas of Somerset go underwater. So it is one of those things that we need to look into Worcester and Wimico to be able to work together with Somerset to provide areas for us to have industrial improvement. And when we talk about future projects in 2030 and beyond, we have to look at what's happening right now in Texas. People are going into space. We just launched rockets to take things to Mars. We just had successful launches into space and brought other materials and persons back from space. We have Waltrip Islands in Virginia. Somerset can also benefit by having industrial-based businesses here to provide that income in the future. That is up to the local chambers of commerce, and that's a discussion I would like to be able to have in the future.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question came in from email. The Delmarva pipeline plans to run through Queens Anne, Kent, Dorchester, Wycomico, Cecil, Somerset, and Worcester counties, almost our entire district. What will you do to ensure that the pipeline is not built?
The best thing that we've done is continue to show up. The best thing that we've been able to do is continue to tell them no. Just as we've shown up for Black Lives Matter, just as we've shown up for the Women's March, we make sure that everyone that is there comes together and that we be able to make sure that we tell them that our environment is here and it has to be able to be stable. We can't have you digging up in our backyard to put your pipeline. We have to make sure that our wetlands are protected. We have to make sure our waterways are protected. These are the things that we have to be able to say is vital to us, especially for the fishermen out there, because guess what? If we have a gas leak or oil leak, all of that goes into the river, all of that goes into the bay, all of that may also leak into the tributaries that go into the ocean. We can't allow that to happen. Our shore is shrinking. We have to tell them the answer is no. We know who's good at saying no. That's Representative Harris, and he says yes to this project. He says yes to offshore drilling, and we have to tell him no, and we have to tell those who want to build this project no.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that one. Just a reminder, everyone, you can feel free to post your questions in the chat. Just try and keep them related to rural communities issues. And again, if we have time at the end, we'll go ahead and touch on some other questions. Another question from email is, how has Trump and China's trade war impacted American farmers, and specifically Maryland farmers?
Well, most of our Maryland farmers send their products to Canada, Europe, and South America and Africa. As far as China, if whatever percentage that is, I understand that it's been bankrupting our economy. and they've basically grown it and then basically sold it for pennies on the dollar. We need to be able to get rid of that tariff once Joe Biden's in office. That's the bottom line. That's something I agree with, and we need to make sure that's the future trade agreement that we have with President Joe Biden in our future, to make sure that our farmers are taken care of and not tossed around as, oh, I got a better deal, I got a better tariff. That really hurts our farmers, and they understand that in their pocketbook, in their home, and with their families, and that has to stop.
Excellent. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and touch on to a question that was mentioned earlier in the chat from Cody. It's not related to rural communities quite so, but what is Mia going to do to help people with disabilities, not just in rural areas, but everywhere?
So as a person with a disability myself, this explains why I have so many screens here, we need to make sure that everybody's covered. Okay? Now, are you talking about like for Medicare insurance, or are you talking about for employment? Or was this an email question?
It could be either, honestly. Yeah, I'm honestly new to some of your policies. I've heard of you before. I've heard that you're very supportive for people with disabilities, and I'm just trying to kind of get a sense of like where you stand with everything with regards to disabilities.
The hardest problem I have is with employers who want to abuse their privileges by wanting to disclose our ADA disabilities to our known supervisors and make that a disturbance or hostile work environment. We need to be able to develop a tolerance policy of harassment and bullying to make sure that discrimination ends, so that we can keep our jobs, so that we can be able to maintain and not have to fight for it, so that we can get that equity that we deserve. Okay?
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Mia, did you want to cover the next question of where does Mia live?
Well, soon it's going to be on my boat over there in the Kent Narrows.
Yep, everybody. Mia just got a boat, so she'll be living on the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions for Mia? You can feel free to drop them in right now. Looks like we have another one. From Dale, any specific ideas or policies to increase entrepreneurship in Somerset County? So similar to our other question.
Definitely get with me afterwards. I got tons of ideas to help y'all out.
Did you want to expand on some of them?
Not at this time.
Sure. I understand there's probably a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
All right. There's no other questions. I'll wait a little bit longer. Let's see, we have some events coming up. On Saturday, we have our National Gala. So we're celebrating the Democratic Convention with Democrats across the country. We have your favorite Democrats who've recorded some messages for you guys. So if you go to Mia's Facebook page, you can join that event. We're also having a fundraiser in Betterton on Sunday. It's socially distanced and it's limited person. So there's a couple tickets left if you're interested. That'll be secure.actblue.com/Betterton. I'll drop that down here.
Just a quick question. It's this Saturday. Is it this coming Saturday?
So the gala is this Saturday. It's a virtual event, kind of like this, but it's just going to be a webinar where people are just going to be able to watch because it's all pre-recorded videos of us and our teams from across the nation, including local representatives throughout the state who have agreed to basically say, hey, we welcome Joe Biden and we're excited to hear about your new VP, etc.
Mm-hmm. And is that the link in the chat for that?
I'm going to drop the link right now.
Oh, great.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the Betterton event is going to be over at Mel's. So if y'all ever remember Mel, he is a friend of Wayne Gilchrist. And Wayne Gilchrist will be speaking with us. He's a former representative up here on the Eastern Shore. So everybody should definitely remember him. We've had some wonderful conversations and we're excited to be able to share that with you this Sunday. Once the tickets for the in-person event is sold, there are still tickets available for those who are going to be wanting to watch individually from where you are right now, virtually. So don't feel free, to just like not attend. definitely attend because this will be something where everybody is welcomed. We'll be walking around with the camera, showing everything off, and talking to each of our guests.
Excellent, and I'm excited to go. I think that this next question is really good to wrap up with. Well, actually, we have another question submitted from email. How do you plan to win small towns across the shore with COVID-19 affecting a traditional campaign?
Well, I was right there in the neck of it when I was kicked out of 2 neighborhoods. So basically, the way that we've done everything is we've had folks call. We've had events like this almost daily, and we're doing them weekly to make sure that our communities are involved. So the best thing I can tell you to do is tell your friends, tell your neighbors, all right? Tell them to come to our Facebook page, check out our events, go to our website, make a contribution, because here's what's really going to happen. People are going to start getting their mail-in ballots, applications, and then they're going to have to go back and do everything else. Well, go ahead and tell them to vote by mail. Get that application out of the mailing system and have them vote by mail. And it's up to us to talk to our neighbors. Talk to Lauren. She'll get you on a phone team. Talk to Justin. Talk to Jared. We're all going to be able to call and text in this digital environment. Trust me, we're sending about 6,000 to 8,000 texts a day. And on the primary, I sent about 119,000 texts. And I made sure that I called 24,000 people. It is possible to do this election completely virtually. We need your help to make sure that it gets done. And that doesn't happen unless we have additional funding, which means we need to be able to make sure that we send our beautiful postcards out in the mail. Right? Postage is how we're going to save our post office. And we want to make sure that we reach all of our voters to basically tell them to vote with Mia. So if you can do that, Lauren's going to drop the link for our donation page so that you can make a contribution tonight. $35 or more is really going to help us out to send out to 100 folks. Okay?
Well, thank you. So I just dropped the link down there. It's miadmason.com/donate. Chip in if you can. Let's see, on to our next question, which I think is a perfect way to wrap it up, and especially on a positive note, Mia.
Yeah.
What are maybe 2, 3 platform issues that you're the most passionate about?
Well, the 2 that I enjoyed the most were why I started running for office was basically my civil rights were being taken away. I was fighting for my own life. I was fighting for why I was existing. And that was to basically end the discrimination that I was going through. I spoke at the Women's March in 2018 to encourage women to run. It became what was known as the Blue Wave. Here we are in the Rainbow Wave, and we are going to finish that up. And like I spoke about earlier, we've been fighting legal battles, and we've had historical wins through the Supreme Court this summer in June, and I was excited. So we have won, and it's been 4 to 6 years of hard work, right, through national organizations to make sure that our rights were restored. And now we have to make sure that we don't have Trump for a second term so that we can make sure that we continue to restore the equity and equality. And now for the second issue that I'm very passionate about is healthcare. I've at one time had 3 healthcare providers. 3. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida, and then of course I had TRICARE, which is kind of like Medicare. And I have to tell you, when you get denied by all 3 of them and you get stuck with a $7,000 medical bill because they can't figure out who to bill because your employer requires you to have it because of the ACA, I understand. So we want to make sure that we have Medicare for all, no Part A, B, C, or D, and that we make sure that everybody, regardless of their age and the entire family, has an affordable plan based on their income so that you can have health care without having to worry about it or having to worry about who your provider is and who you can go see and who you can go talk to. You should be able to log into your portal, set up an appointment, be like where we are right now, and talk to your nurse or doctor and take care of the concerns that you have right now. I don't want to see another person commit suicide because they couldn't handle their bills for health care. I don't want to see my family have another huge medical bill. I don't want to see folks get stuck at CVS or Walgreens because they can't afford their prescriptions. These are the things that I believe if we pass Medicare for all, it's going to be a cost savings for all of us. That's another thing that I'm very passionate about, and I want to make sure that our families have a set price per year. If I can afford $600 per year for my TRICARE, for me in the military, I think that we can pass that on to everybody in the entire United States. I want to close with that one.
We did have a couple extra questions, Mia. Did you want to, they just rolled in. Did you want to answer those ones
Sure,
as well?
sure.
We do have some time. Let's see, from Ryan. Whoop. Next ones. In what areas do you see Andy Harris failing the rural communities in our district?
Well, he likes to say no. He likes to say yes to where he wants to be able to do things to help his folks. I call him Grant King Andy Harris for a reason, because he'll pick and choose who he wants. We have failing farmers out here, all right? Yes, they have guns. Yes, we're suing the NRA right now. But what's more important, making money or that gun? That's where we're going to see where Representative Harris fails. And we're also going to see where Representative Harris fails with women. About 50 to 60% of our district is made up of women. And of course, Representative Harris has no problem telling a woman that they can pay more for health care, that they can, do without, and that they should not have an abortion. This is where we're going to start winning our rural communities, when we start investing in our infrastructure and start making a change that Representative Harris has just simply said no to.
That's right. Our next question from Jared is, how do you plan to work with and appeal to those who work on the water here in the shore?
Exactly who, Jared? You can talk. Are you talking about the fishermen or the other folks?
Yeah, like the folks in rural communities like Chrisfield, those who work on the water, crabbing, fishing, so on and so forth, that type of work.
Exactly. I think one of the best things that we can be able to do is make sure that we work with Homeland Security and ICE to ease the visa problems that we have. And that would definitely help them be able to continue to have their, immigrant workers continue to work with them. That will help the fishermen so that they can be able to maintain their jobs and their livelihood. Because one of the best things I learned about knocking on the door is where fishermen go, all right, to great lengths, from DC to Maryland to Jersey to New York, all the way down to Virginia Beach to deliver their goods. So this is vital for them to be able to make sure that they have access to their visas so that they can keep their workers working while they're, either on captaining their boat or delivering their products to our customers.
And Mia, just a question from the chat. Can you elaborate on what you mean by visa problems?
So with the visa problems that are currently happening right now, they're being delayed or held back. Basically, we've closed our borders, not just because of the pandemic. We've basically said, you have to have a certain job or skill set, you have to have a degree, you have to have worth in order to come into America, and you have to qualify to basically come to America. Those are the visa problems that we have. In fact, even Donald Trump is trying to change our federal jobs programs for U.S. jobs to be a skill set job instead of a qualification skill set. We need to reverse those two because you know what? The Dreamers here, the DACA folks that are here, they deserve to be here. We have to be able to make sure that America is a melting pot and that we continue to allow people to dream and hope that they can have a better life for them and their families.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
At this time, are there any more questions? If so, go ahead and drop them in the chat. With that, I'd like to go ahead and transition into our closing remarks. I did want to thank everybody for coming tonight and taking the time out of your Thursday night, excuse me, to see us and listen to Mia and especially her platform. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mia for some closing remarks now.
Well, it's almost time for tea. But yes, I thank everybody for joining us, and hopefully I've answered all of your questions. If not, definitely, make sure you email us. Talk to Lauren. You can give me a call at 410-94-MASON. That's my actual phone number. It's 946-2766. You'll be able to actually talk to me and spend some time and ask any other questions that you might have. We are here to make sure that we represent you. That's the bottom line. That's why it's called the House of Representatives, and that's why we're running for office. So if you heard my story, it's time for you to have your story on the House floor. And with that, thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Bye. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you, Mia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's a beautiful ship.
Thanks very much, Mia. We appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone. We'll be returning to normal meetings next month, still via Zoom.
All right.